Welcome to Kardec Radio, where you nourish your soul daily. As you wait for our next program on the way to the light, visit Kardec Publisher at kardecpublisher.com to check out our latest books. Also, check out our Kardec Flicks, Spiritism in a Click. Just go to kardecflix.com. And now, with you, our host, Angy Stewart, with the program On the Way to the Light. Enjoy it.
Good evening, my friends. This is Angy Stewart from Mia Inner Light, and we are live here in Kardec Radio. Tonight is Thursday, 9:03 p.m. Eastern Time. It's a pleasure to be here as we do every month. So the first Thursday of the month, we are studying this beautiful book. Oh, let me remove a message that I forgot here. Hold on 1 second. Yes, now it's much better. So we studied this book, and it is an amazing, amazing book. If you love history and facts about our beautiful blue planet that you don't know well, this is the book to understand. This is a book that makes science and history. And it's wonderful for us to go through it so we can learn together. Because sometimes books are a little bit confusing, but when we study together, everything gets easier. And in our last 10 minutes, we studied this other beautiful book, What is Spiritism? It's a thin book that was also done by Kardec, but most of the people only know the books from the codification. So this is another really, really good book. And we dedicate just 10 minutes. So it's a little piece every time we come to this study. So as we always do, I will invite you to have your water bottle where you're going to have the medication for this week. And I would like to invite you to briefly close your eyes so we can do our initial prayer. And we will all be inspired, okay? God, our Mother and Father, thank you for bringing us together this night. We ask the good spirits that are here with us to continue inspiring myself, my two guests for tonight, and everyone that will be participating in the live and also in the recording, so we all can put our thoughts together to understand better, to open our minds to certain things that we still cannot understand. And with this feeling, this thought that we are on the path to the light, we are all improving morally and intellectually. And we are together here with the good spirits to help us on this way. Thank you. So be it. So, my friends, it's a pleasure to be here. Let me bring my guests for tonight. So, Mark, hello. How are you doing?
Wonderful, Angela. Good to be here.
Here.
Great to be here. Thank you, Angy.
Thank you. Mark, just tell us which location you are right now and which Spiritist Center now you are affiliated with.
Well, I have become embracing of the virtual nature of Spiritism since 2020. I have both in-person memberships that have existed in Miami on the East Coast and in California on the West Coast, in Sacramento, which is my hometown. Currently, I'm in 2 hours north of Sacramento, across the border in Nevada, just outside of the town of Reno. But I'm still affiliated with those two and two others, both in New York. The affiliation is not a full membership, and I certainly don't attend in person, but there are specific sessions with those Spiritist centers, which I do regularly attend.
You are a man of a center. You are centered person. Very, very good. Thank you so much, Mark, for being here with us tonight. And my other guest is Teresa. Hello, Teresa.
Hello, Angie.
How are you
Thank you for
doing?
having me. I'm well. I'm very well. I'm glad to be here again on your program. It's always a fun time.
Teresa is another one that is also a centered person. I remember I was in New York. By the way, Inner Enlightenment in New York, the one that I founded and I opened, it's like my baby, is 18 years old today.
Wow.
Oh, that's fabulous.
Fabulous.
Congratulations. I saw that online. Yeah.
It's incredible.
It's
And
a
then I
beautiful center.
remember Teresa telling me, "Oh, I come from Vermont," and I'm like, "Vermont to New York City?" And she's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Wow!" That was
Those
like,
were the days, but now with all the virtual.
yes, yes. Before COVID, it was very, very difficult,
Hmm.
that's what we always say. Like many times, bad things happen, but they push us towards solutions. It's like
That's right.
we have to fight. We have to understand what can we do to improve. And this was one of the things. Not just the Spiritist Center, but everything. Work.
Mhm.
I remember in the past, we had to go to work every single day, and we still had a lot of paper and documents. And then I remember thinking, why do we keep documents? We have to scan everything. Most of the documents were not even in paper anymore. They were just like in PDF. And then
Yeah.
when COVID came, and like that's it. No more paper. Now everything is stored in some kind of cloud, and
But
everything.
how beautiful is this? If it weren't for that, you in Florida, Mark out in Nevada, me in Vermont, we would not be meeting here tonight on
That's
August
Exactly.
7th.
that's right.
Exactly. This
That's
is
right.
the beauty. From
Yeah.
a difficult moment in life, it came like many other things that were actually progress to society. So this is one of the progress that we can be together and we can talk about spiritism, share knowledge. It is wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much for both of you being here tonight.
Well, thank you, Angie, for creating this.
Ah, thank you. I see also Juan and Alicia. Hello, Juan. Juan is also here from Miami. Hi, Alicia. I don't know where you are calling from. Tell us a little bit about where you are located. Nice to have you here with us. So, as usual, this is the book On the Way to the Light. And tonight we will all be talking about the chapter 4. And chapter 4 is the Egyptian civilization. This is a civilization that I was always enchanted because until nowadays, all scientists they don't know 100% sure how the pyramids were constructed. There are many different theories, like many ideas. Each scientist, each research thinks, oh, it was done like this or like that, or maybe like this, but they don't really know for sure. And as who was Haroldo Dutra, as Haroldo Dutra mentioned, if the pyramids weren't there, we probably wouldn't even believe they ever existed.
Hmm.
It's such a gigantic, colossal work that would be like, oh no, that's not possible to be created in that time. But thank God they were strong enough to resist, and we see them. Yeah, they exist. They are there. So we will be talking about this amazing civilization tonight. So we will start, as always, reading a tiny little piece, and then we are going to be talking about. In our view, if you're listening, would like to make a comment or ask questions, please feel free to do so. So the Egyptians. Of all the spirits exiled on the earth, those who constituted the Egyptian civilization were the ones who stood out the most in the practice of the good and the worship of the truth. Moreover, it is important to remember that they were the ones with the fewest debts before the tribunal of the divine justice. So this is already like this is how the chapter starts, and this is already tells us, whoa, whoa. So these people, they really understood what was the worship of the truth, and they were the ones who had less debts from the civilizations that came from Capella, for example. So it is very interesting for us to understand. But as we know, the ones who came from Capella, they were in debt. So they were not little angels. They were all problematic people, but each one have a different issue, each one of them. And the Egyptians, they were no angels, but they were extremely intelligent, and they were really connected with life after death. They had like a clear understanding of it. And that's what we are going to start talking about. So, what can we talk about the Egyptians? What little piece can we talk about this beautiful group?
Well, from what you just said, the words are deliberately chosen, and the word exiled is the action verb. Of all the spirits exiled on earth, those of the Egyptians were the ones who stood out the most in the practice of the good. So immediately the word exile kind of implies a punishment or a mission of sorts, a responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember right off the bat, when I read that opening word and I saw that word exile, I went, that's not the way I ever thought of Egyptians, as being forced to be here. That's kind of interesting.
Well, so my understanding, and I think maybe your group started this with the previous chapter about the Capellans and how they were, they no longer had the affinity to go back to to be reincarnated back to their own planet. So Jesus in his mercy accepted them here. And so, when we talk about, like you were saying, Angy, about that they were out of the group of Capellans that came, the ones that settled in Egypt were the most highly elevated in terms of, practicing the good and truth. So, but we need to remember it would be like one of us ending up on a primitive planet. We know a lot more. We know about using cell phones, and we know about, that, there's the internet. But if we were to arrive at a primitive planet, we would look like much more advanced in terms of know-how, but they were, like you said, they weren't morally advanced. There was a reason they couldn't go back to this regenerating planet, which, we're kind of in the same space right now, right? Our planet is kind of where this planet in Capella was regenerating. So, they retain their memory, but the ones that settled in Egypt, right? Because they settled in different parts of the world, but the ones that settled in Egypt were the most elevated out of the group, although all of them were not able to go back. They were all exiled, so to speak. And they had this longing, they wanted, because they had the memory where some of the other ones didn't remember, like us, they reincarnated, but they don't know, their past. And then we should understand that they were not the actual ones that built the pyramids, but it was this knowledge that they brought with them that got passed on. And that was something that was pointed out to me in a study group of this many years ago in New York City, actually, that, oftentimes people confuse them with the Egypt at the time of the pyramids, but this was actually much prior. This was like 46,000 BC. So it was, way before we were still just coming out of the Neanderthals and all that. But them mixing with the other human race and our peri-spirits changing and so on and so forth. But anyway, their knowledge got passed on, and that's how the pyramids came to be. So I think it's just good to clarify that, because I know myself.
Wait. Clarify that. Clarify
Yeah.
that. Explain what you just said.
Well, so my understanding is that the Capellan emigration to the earth was like 46,000 BC. And if you look, it kind of will confirm it if you look in this book.
Yeah.
Okay.
What you said, they are not the ones who constructed the pyramids?
No, it was
Say?
their knowledge, though. Their knowledge got passed on, right? It was through
Yes,
their knowledge. They brought this knowledge here. So it wasn't these actual
reincarnating. They
Mhm.
didn't. They continue reincarnating. So yes, they came from Capella very, 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 very long time ago.
Right.
They didn't disappear. They continue reincarnating the same spirits because they needed to evolve. They continue. And what the books teach us is that they were the ones who constructed the pyramids. And then with the continuous evolution of these spirits, that they didn't necessarily only reincarnate as Egyptians, but most of them stayed in that area. They reincarnated in other civilizations too, Hebrews as
Mhm.
well. They were very much connected. And when they reached to the point that they clear their debts, they
Mhm.
return to Capella.
Right.
Most of them, not all of them, but most of
Right.
them
Yeah.
return
So
to.
I guess what I meant to say, that because sometimes I think, and I understood it wrong in the beginning, was that I thought, oh, the Capellans came at the time of the pyramids. But thank you for clarifying about they came, and yes, then they kept reincarnating and coming back, and then it was at this time that I think when we get to the end of this chapter, they talk about how they kind of left the pyramids as, they don't say it a goodbye present, but it's kind of, they're leaving this as um, an eternal message for the planet's future civilization.
This is good to clarify, because when we talk about the Capellans, we always talk about the Egyptians, and yes, the people have the idea they came just to do the pyramids and boom, they left.
Right.
And it's not. It was not like that, but they
So,
were the same spirits that were able to.
Kept reincarnating. Thank you for clarifying that.
so Angela, I have a question. There may be an actual reference book, but what I remember is a discussion early in my spiritist journey on this very topic. And I was like Teresa, I thought, there was a time frame that was kind of condensed. And the reality is it's a very extensive frame of
Mhm.
time from the moment they arrived, all the reincarnations to the point where the pyramids were built. So it's interesting to think about the reincarnation reality, that some of those Capellans, now known as Egyptians, evolved to be slaves and build the pyramids.
Well, it wasn't all of
And,
them. Not all
well,
Egyptians.
no, not
Mhm.
all. No, certainly. And there was this, in this migration, in this
Mhm.
series of multiple lives, if you will, you of course have slavery taking place in other locations, and they're bringing the slaves from other locations, other parts of Africa, etc., and slave masters. And I think this all contributes to this, large duration of time, multiple lifetimes that a spirit would have to go through to get to that point of being able to go back to Capella.
Yes, because one of the biggest problems of the the Egyptian society was like even if they were very much like they believed in God, in life after death, they were extremely intelligent. So imagine they came to Earth. Earth was like a caveman planet
Mhm.
when they came, like in Neanderthals time. And they already were like their thoughts, their minds were much ahead. I imagine that they are the ones who started like, okay, maybe we can create a fire. I like they started things that the cavemen from Earth they couldn't. So they start reincarnating many times, reincarnating in in different societies. But the most of them, when we talk about the Egyptians, they stayed there, but they were the ones who made the Hebrews enslaved. So this demonstrated they were not so loving, but that's why they came to Earth because they were super intelligent. But in Capella, when they lived in Capella, when you studied Capella, you know it is a much more evolved planet than Earth is right now. It's better than Earth. But exactly like Earth, Capella was in this transition. It was also becoming a better planet. And as we know, the Earth right now is in the regeneration. And to be a planet fully regenerated, we have to remove remove now, like to help all the hardened spirits, the ones that are not loving, forgiving, improving morally, they are having the last chance to live on earth. Because if they continue with the same mistakes, making really horrible things, when they die, they will not reincarnate on earth. They will reincarnate on a planet inferior than earth. And that's exactly what happened to Capella. That's why they came, so many civilizations came, including the Egyptians. And as you can see, super intelligent, but is still understanding a different type of people. I can enslave them. And that's why it took much longer for them to go back to Capella because they still needed to understand they couldn't do that. And we don't know exactly when they left, but we understand that the Egyptians that are there right now are not the same souls, because most of the Egyptian souls from that time, from the time of the pyramids, not the time of the Neanderthals, from the time of the pyramids, they already clear their debts and they return to Capella because they are more morally evolved, and that's what's happening to Earth right now. So it's not they were angels, Mark. They were extremely intelligent, but they came here because they needed to learn how to be morally
Yep.
better, and
Right.
they were just super bright, but that's it.
And you know, this chapter speaks to the intelligence, as Teresa alluded earlier, with the ability to talk about the future. Well, it's kind of interesting. Here we are in 2025, and at least publicly, we still don't know everything about the pyramids. We have not, as humans, advanced enough to be able to fully understand the engineering aspect, let alone the manufacturing aspect, how they actually built it. But the engineering design is, there's not another place like it on the planet.
Yeah.
And we still don't understand everything about that pyramid and what's below it and what's next to it and, beneath the Sphinx and all that kind of stuff. But when you realize, and again, Teresa, thank you for the reference, 46,000 years. My God, there's an enormous amount of time for civilizations and sand to accumulate in layers, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so we
Yeah,
have,
we are still like trying to discover, and maybe this will be a mystery for a few reincarnations
yeah,
because Until now, we only have theories and many interesting ones. I have seen like at least 10. And then I'm like, wow, elephants pull the pyramids, they roll the blocks, and like it's so many different things. And like when you think, how was it possible? Didn't have any type of a truck.
Yeah,
Mm.
The-
let alone the technology to be able to measure angles.
oh yeah,
Yeah,
yes,
there's those, that's so crude in terms of where the tools were. And yet,
exactly.
and yet, the accuracy is
Yeah,
stunning.
no, amazing. The
Yeah.
size, because they said the pieces, they had to be in very different size, because the more you go up, they have to be smaller and they have to connect. Amazing,
Yeah.
amazing,
Yeah.
amazing. My friends, what about the secret knowledge? What can we talk about it?
It was reserved for only the highest Egyptians because they knew that the lower Egyptians, lower spirits, lower humans, would not be able to handle the knowledge, would abuse whatever knowledge they had. Um, and so they kept it to themselves.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Teresa, what do you have to add?
Well, this was the beginning of the occult sciences. So, alchemy, astrology, theosophy, spiritism. Not that spiritism began there, but this is the occult sciences that, they started to have the mystery schools and these initiations. And again, it was limited to the circle of the high priests and the priestesses, and not because they were exclusive, because like what Mark said, they understood, right? They were more advanced in their thinking, and they understood the masses, the general public, was not ready to receive a lot of this information. They knew, they had the foresight that they knew, humankind had to have its, growing, and that they weren't ready for this information. So it appears like as if it was, exclusive, but there was a good reason. It wasn't out of, you know, just,
Yes.
lack of love for the brother. Actually,
Out of love.
it was a good deed on their part, that
Yeah.
they were protecting humanity that was not ready to receive a lot of the information. And, out of this, uh, uh, these other sciences came, uh, like I said, came to manifest, carrying the secret knowledge and those who were ready for it. Um, yeah, and I mean, from here, the whole thing about, I don't want to get ahead of myself, so I'll just stop there.
So, Alicia, yes, here is 9:30 p.m. and you said that you are in the Philippines and it's morning time. So, super happy to have you here. Another good thing that the internet provides us. Alicia is in the Philippines. This is great. And Juan is saying, question, what were the Egyptian good deeds that enabled them to return to Capella? Well, many. So, what we can start, Juan, is we can start, as I just mentioned, when we talk about Egyptian civilization, we have to understand that even if it was a whole people who came together, thousands of people, they were not all the same. There were the pharaohs and there were the very, very humble, poor, simple Egyptians. So they had like different levels there. And as anywhere else, there are very good people and very bad people. And what God does to force people to improve. When we are making mistakes in one thing, thousand possibilities, as a spiritism give thousands of possibilities, so we can never give you one answer, but the one idea of 1,000. I am a pharaoh, like I'm a pharaoh, powerful Egyptian, and I have my hundreds of slaves, and I feel that they are property, they are material, they don't even have the life of the right to exist. when I die, if I have this type of thought, how God is going to teach me? Or I will come back as a slave, or I will come back in a different way that will force me to understand that my thought was wrong. So this is how they start learning. So like maybe they were Egyptian, a pharaoh from Egypt, and then he reincarnated as a simple Hebrew man that was enslaved by his own son. And then Cain starts teaching. As we said, it's not that they came reincarnated a couple times and returned to Capella. It takes a long, long time, a long, long time. For us, it's very easy to think about the pyramids and the time of Moses, the slaves, what happened there. But we have to understand that they continue reincarnating. They continue reincarnating. And as even Givaldo mentioned, many of that capellans from that time that didn't return to Capella are us. We were very slow. We're still slow. We're still slow. But we don't need to keep reincarnated in Egypt. We can go to other countries because every time we are exposed to different country, different beliefs, we evolve and we open our minds, and it helps us. So this is one of the many possibilities. But obvious, there were also Egyptians that reached to a time and they felt like many things were wrong and they shouldn't be wrong and they were against that, and they evolved without so much pain. They didn't need to reincarnate as slaves, for example. So everything depends on each one of us. We are all together here, but our souls are different and our moral levels, intellectual levels are different. So many possibilities. You guys have anything to add to the explanation?
Well, even like writing and different
Language.
things like that, perfumes. I mean, a lot
Herbs.
of things came from them because they already had that advanced knowledge. I mean, you could easily Google it. I
Yeah.
know I've presented on that in the past, and it's just not on the top of my tongue.
Yeah, no, it's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
They were pioneers of metallurgy, determining that the natural resources that God created in rocks and different minerals and so on. And it was the forerunner of things like gunpowder. But back then, the Egyptians, when they had their sacrificial rites and so on, they were dropping powder over a flame to get a big flame. Well, that had never been seen before, So there was all kinds of discoveries. I know, culinary people talk about spices. They introduce spices into cooking, and some of the spices are still in use today.
Wow, that's super cool. I didn't even know that. So let's move on because our time runs. And what about two things here: the symbolic polytheism and also the cult of death and the mental psychoses?
So I was just going to say that this symbolic polytheism is also, in a way, a good deed that they did, because even though the elevated Capellans that were, in Egypt as the high priests and priestesses, they understood the idea of monotheism, of one God, but they supported the idea of many gods to help educate the masses. And the reason, we kind of had to go through that of, having many gods is because it helped us to explain things we didn't understand and couldn't make sense of. So, and also in doing that, having these many gods, they created the mythology. And through that, they were able to teach the masses about morals. So, when we look about the myth about King Midas, and, he wanted to turn everything to gold, and the teaching there is that, you learn about simplicity. So if you take any of the mythologies, you can find the moral story in them. So that, that is kind of hooked with a good deed that they did. And that was one of the things is in them coming here was to help us. So, I mean, and how can you help primitive people? You can't teach them calculus necessarily. You know what? You have to grow little by little. And also, it wasn't just about teaching us about technology, but I think it was also the morals, because that's what they were lacking, right?
Exactly.
Why they were here. So I wanted to add that. Maybe Mark wants to talk about metempsychosis.
Sure.
And Mark, yeah, what about the cult of death
Well,
and the metempsychosis?
well, there's no question. Much of humanity all over the globe through the ages have had this preoccupation with death, a fascination by some cultures and a fear by other cultures. And other cultures simply wholesale acceptance. You make the most of the life you have. You live in the present type of thing. So it is interesting to think about all this from the standpoint of what their philosophies and realities were when they first came from Capella, and then how it evolved over time to the Egypt we know today at the time of the pyramids. It's kind of interesting to think about their fascination with death, especially in light of who got buried in the pyramids and how it was done, you know? And so I think that is part of that fascination. Now, the other part, ties directly into what we might call their moral inferiority. They had this very elaborate set of rituals and practices associated with the principle of upon death, you'll come back as an animal. You will regress. And I kind of think what Teresa was just saying, that, well, maybe that was their contribution to the future of humanity, is they showed the absurdity of that. I don't know. But here we are, all these years later, and humans have finally advanced to realize, no, we're humans, and if you believe in reincarnation, you're coming back as a human.
Yeah.
At least on this planet.
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
No, so Emmanuel, though, he says, that idea, that theory of metempsychosis, it stems from their memory of being exiled on Earth. So it's like They felt, in a sense, like they went backwards, because now they're with these animal, like we were still coming out of the animal kingdom or whatever. And and then the idea about who, when a priest or priestess would die, they were considered, because they had all the sacred knowledge, all the spiritual knowledge. So all their wills would kind of like converge and concentrate on these places, the pyramids where they were buried. And so, the magnetism that became involved with these places, and he alludes to the, like the people, those explorers that opened King Tut's tomb, and they died because of being exposed to that magnetism.
And when we talk about the cult of death, it is also present in other civilizations. For example, the Maya and Inca, the Mexican ones. In the Maya culture, they were sure they are going to die and they're going to wake up in the other side of life. And when I was in Mexico visiting the pyramids, also pyramids, different style of pyramids, and they were talking about the famous game they had there. That was like a style of soccer game. But what happened is that the team that was going to lose, they were all going to be sacrificed. They were going to be killed. We actually talked about this last week in the Spiritist Center here in Miami. But they all volunteered to play this game, because for them was an honor to be able to be in this very spiritual game. And then I remember when the tour guide was saying that, I'm like, I would never volunteer to You volunteer to play a soccer game, and if you lose the game, you will be killed. I'm like, I don't want to be part of this. But for them, it's just the body is dying, and they used to say goodbye to their families because they didn't know if they're going to win or they're going to lose, and that they understood if they die, it's okay, because that's for the better reason. I will die doing something good, and I will cross to the
Mhm.
other side, and I will be happy. And obviously, in spiritism, we understand that we all will wake up. All everybody physically dies and wake up in the spiritual realm, but you will wake up in a good solution, in a good situation, not because if the soccer game was good, but if your behavior throughout that life was good.
Yeah.
So, but the knowledge that there is life after death was there as well. That was very interesting. Sorry, Teresa, what you want to
No, I
say?
was just going to add that, and these elevated capellans, these Egyptians, they knew, where they had come, and they knew kind of their consolation was in the afterlife. The hope of going back to that planet. But like you said, they reincarnated many times, but still they held that. They had that great longing to return there, and I think that's something to acknowledge.
You
Yes.
know, it is interesting to consider that, as we know and is written many times in the more modern books, spiritist books, that we learn what we're meant to learn when we're meant to learn it. And if you apply that reality to this long duration of time in Egypt, and the fact that they were capable of remembering their previous lives, that puts a really interesting spin on their evolution over time. If they were, in fact, progressing each time, addressing their moral deficiencies, etc., they got better with each successive, because of their knowledge of the past, they got better with each successive life. You know, a distinct advantage getting back to
But,
Capella.
but one thing, it's not that they knew it deeply. They knew deep inside of them, they knew they were not from that place. But it's not that they immediately, oh, I'm not from this planet, I live. It's
Uh,
not
uh,
exact like that. But when you, like, for example, I'm born in Brazil, I love Brazil, but I was always longing for something that I didn't know what was it. And I was like from a kind of middle low class family, never imagined about leaving Brazil. So I was happy with that, but I was like, oh, I'm like, I don't know. Anyway, long story short, when I went to Rome, I knew it. I'm like, it's here. This is my house. This is my home. I want to. That's where I'm from. I'm from it. So
Mhm.
that was more or less what happened to them. They had this longing from something that they really didn't know what was. But spiritually speaking, they knew deep inside of them, they knew they were not from them, and they were feeling bad because of the situation they were going through, and they didn't understand why. But I'm not from here, why? But it's not that they had this clear
Mm.
parent understanding, I'm from another planet. So this is important for us to understand. It was more like a deep insight, almost like a nostalgia of something that they couldn't understand. That's the point. So that's my nostalgia from Rome. But this is more or less that's a deep inside they knew they were not from there, but it's not that they were so super clear on a daily life for them. And
But
just
Emmanuel does say that they knew about their homeland. So, and maybe on some level, I get what you're saying, but he
yeah,
does say that in there.
yeah, it's like a, because when we talk about that, it looks like we immediately knew I'm not from Earth, I'm from another planet. And
Mm.
it's not exactly how it was with them. They had this feeling they were not from there, and they longing something else. And the spirits even mentioned they used to observe the stars, and imagine, where is my home? My home is somewhere, but
Mm,
it's not that they knew it directly.
yeah.
Uh, Maybe when they went to sleep and they reconnected, as we know that we go to sleep, we leave our physical bodies and we have a brighter understanding of life. That's more or less how it was. And just for the ones that listened to this and didn't pay much attention, Mark was mentioning the maintenance psychosis. This is a very complicated name, but basically is the idea that a human being can reincarnate as an animal. So you go from a human being to be a dog, or even insects. Like for example, the the Indians from nowadays, their belief is still like that. They still believe that. They believe that if they are bad people, if they do bad things, they will be punished by God, coming back as a cockroach. And that's their belief. And another thing they understand is that the ones that call untouchables, because they are very, very poor, destitute of everything, they believe this is a caste of people who did really, really bad things, and they were reincarnated in this position because they have to go through this pain. And the ones who try to help them, they might get the same curse from God.
That's
But
funny.
this is not the understanding of Spiritism. We believe that we have to help everyone, doesn't matter their situation, and then we should always help, doesn't matter what, and we don't come back as cockroaches if we are bad people. We will come
Mm,
back, it may be in a difficult situation to learn, but not as a human being, not as an animal or insect or something like that. So this is the mental psychosis, little summary. But we need to finish pretty quickly because time flies. We need to finalize quickly. What do you guys talk about the Egyptians and psychic science? That's super interesting.
Well, we already said they were the forerunners. The formality of the occult in all of its depth and breadth began with the Egyptians. And
Mm.
and and now with the emphasis on Capella, it's interesting to think that they brought that with them.
Yes, they brought so much knowledge to their time, so much knowledge that it didn't exist. So very, very interesting. Teresa, anything you want to add to this?
uh, so I thought this was interesting about the pyramids will reveal extraordinary knowledge. Um, for the groups of studious spirits of the truths of in life. It's also a future course of earthly humankind. Wait a minute. Oh, so just what we learned from the pyramids about every measurement is a symbolic expression relative to the cosmology of the planet and the solar system. So the ideal meridian, which crosses more continents and fewer oceans. You can calculate the extent of lands that are inhabitable by humans, the approximate distance between the sun and the earth. So this is the information they get from the pyramids. And, it talks about, how long you can determine how long the earth is in its orbit in one day. Um, And so I think, we're coming upon this, that these monuments they said they have two aims. One would be highly sacred temples for study and initiation, while at the same time they would be for posterity, a book into the past with highly important prophecies concerning the darkness to come. So that's very interesting. So I think we are learning more and more about these pyramids, and they're going to help us to
Mhm.
navigate the future. I think that's important.
Yes, yes, definitely. It's like it's so interesting. This is like one of my most interesting points in this book. When I remember when I read this book for the first time, maybe in, I don't know, 20 years ago. My God, I'm getting so old. When I read a book 20 years ago, I was like,
Yeah, but see,
I
it's good.
remember in the
It's
time
good.
I was just like,
Yeah,
oh my God.
but Teresa, you're just getting old. You're not yet old. You're getting
Me? No, I'm old. I'm old, and happy to admit it.
Ah,
old.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm like, oh God, I'm old too.
I'm older
Just
than both of
thinking
you. Come
about the
on.
book again. Like
Well,
this one, look, this one I read. This is the second time I read. This I read in 2014. You see,
Wow.
mm,
but the first time was much before, and then I read again in 2014, and now reading again with all of you. And each time we read, like if we love a book, we shouldn't give it away. If you really love the book and you think it's really powerful, keep it. Because maybe in 10 years you're going to read it again and it will be different because you change, we evolve, we learn. And so many things that I used to think and like, oh, it's different and more amplified. So reading this time, it's like it's so many things changed and I learned, and it's always like, wow, it's always the famous aha moments. I have a
mm.
lot of aha moments.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. That helped me to understand that, because I was always a little confused about all that time period of how, but then, thank you for just filling that in about reincarnation. Makes the
Yeah,
difference.
no,
Yeah, thank you.
you see how things are perfect because what you mentioned is so good, and everybody when talk about Capellan civilizations and the Egyptians, they think they came to construct the pyramids. That's it. They
Mhm.
arrived and boom, built the pyramids and stayed like a couple reincarnations and boom, returned to Capella. And it was not like that. It was not like that. So it's really good that you mentioned Teresa. They came much before.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
they were helping the people from that area to start improving faster. And then with all this knowledge accumulated, then they finally reached to a point, the apis was when they built the pyramids. But they didn't return immediately after the pyramids. They still stayed for a few reincarnations. We don't know exactly how many. And then little by little, they started returning. And many others, like maybe us, are still here, difficult capellans. And we
I
are going to
yeah.
finally now
Well,
improve.
well, again, this is my favorite topic, I think, in Spiritism. You remember that time is a human definition, not a spiritual definition. And we know this because over humans' recorded history, time has changed. In fact, time is changing again right now. Scientists are now saying within the next 5 years, it won't be 24 hours a day. It'll be 23 hours and some odd minutes. The cycle for the Earth to get around the sun is changing. The magnetism is changing. The Earth is in the middle of transformation in many ways. Now, I say that, try to do this analogy. The year zero is Jesus. We think of in terms of after Christ, BC and AD. So we're only 2025 years since Jesus walked the earth. Teresa, 46,000 years. That's 23 times the duration for Capellans from the time they arrived and all the reincarnations they went through for those thousands of years. I mean, again, that's human time calculations. Spiritually, I don't think it applies. The evolution was crazy. But what you just referred to in this chapter is fascinating because some Capellans hung around to the time of Jesus.
Oh, yeah. And I think some of them, didn't it say in there that
Yeah.
some of them even still come
May be
back
here.
and help
Yeah.
out? Yeah.
Yeah. So that's fascinating. That's fascinating to continue.
One little part that I'm going to read from Redemption, that's the last portion of this chapter. It's really nice. So I'm just going to read and then we can reflect. It's the last paragraph, and it mentions of most of the Capellans went back to Capella system, where their souls found comfort in meeting their holiest and purest affections once again. But a large number of these studious and selfless spirits remained in the hosts of Jesus, obeying the sacred imperatives of their sentiments. Under his divine influence, they have often reincarnated on the earth to carry out generous and blessed missions. So, very beautiful. So,
Mhm.
some
Awesome.
of them remained, some of them stayed, and others returned. And we are all evolving. And this is very, very beautiful because in the first chapters, we read that there was this big meeting when the governors from the Capella system, they said these people have to leave. We don't know what we're going to do with them. And Jesus volunteered to receive them. And when they were being shipped here, Jesus had a meeting with them and told them, "You will be loved. I am here to open my arms, receive you in the best way possible. You will need to work hard. It's not going to be easy, but there is hope. And you will bring a lot of involvement to this planet that needs your intelligence, and you will learn morally with them." So it was very beautiful. Of course, wasn't with these words, but this is more or less what was said, and beautiful. And they did good, and they were able to evolve. And
So, Angie, so there were four groups. So we just looked at Egyptian tonight. So in the future, you guys are going to go on to look at the other three, which were not as elevated. But so that's one of the key differences.
exactly,
And which
exactly.
probably most of us came out of
Fascinating.
those three. But they were all needed. It's fascinating to learn.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't want to break the.
Yeah, no, all of them are so fascinating, and
Yeah.
there is one speech from Haroldo Dutra Dias in Inner Enlightenment Building, where he did a seminar of 2 days only about this book.
Oh wow! And it was probably in Portuguese.
Yes, but they nowadays they had translations in captions in
Oh,
translation.
so you could see it on their video?
Yes, yes, we
Hmm.
can Google Haroldo Dutra Dias and this book in English, and it's hilarious because Haroldo he's very funny when he explains and he talks about the Hebrews, and he talks about the actually the nations from Earth that were already here, and they start mixing up. And oh my goodness, it's hilarious. It's hilarious. And he talks about the Hindu civilization. I will see if I find the link and I will post it because
Yeah, I would love to. I've listened to his lectures before. He's excellent.
it's
Yes,
a amazing
absolutely.
Yeah.
explanation. But my friends, it's more than 10 o'clock, and I didn't even have time to go to the other book, and it's okay because the Egyptians are fascinating.
Egyptians.
So
Thank
I
you.
would like to invite you, Teresa, to do our final prayer so we can close it.
Okay, very good. Let us close our eyes, opening our hearts, opening our eyes, our spiritual ears, so we hear the good messages from our very own personal mentors, guardian spirits. And with much gratitude, we say a big thank you to Emmanuel and Chico Xavier and all the spirits involved in bringing this beautiful book to us, and Angy for her effort, her ongoing efforts in disseminating Spiritism. We thank you, and we hope to meet again next week. And let us go forward with these Egyptians in our hearts, remembering that there is cause and effect, there are consequences, and let us try to do our best with this life, in navigating this life, this incarnation. And we thank you so much. And we, with your blessings, ask to close this study session, and so be it.
And so it is. Thank you, Teresa.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
My friends. It was a blessing. See you next month. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Kardec Radio, where we are always nourishing our souls.